Morris to Mark Garnier.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I wanted to speak this afternoon on a couple of new clauses. The first is News Clause 1, which is put forward in the name of my honourable friend, the member for North Dorset. And the second is New Clause 4, which hasn't been selected in the batch, but was in my own personal name. Talking about New Clause 4, this seeks to have the Secretary of State, the DEFRA Secretary of State, to be a trade champion for the British agricultural industry. Whilst it's absolutely the case that the Department for International Trade is the lead department for negotiating free trade deals and for trade promotion, it is, of course, also the case that the trade promotion is a whole-of-government exercise. And I think it's incumbent on every single government department to ensure that they are at all times promoting the great and fantastic products that we have in this country that we want to export to the entire world. And I want to put a marker down to the whole of government that they must be there to promote British exports. But when it comes to the specifics of my new Clause 4, it looks at a number of particular issues. And I think we need to get sort of deep into the weeds of what the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs actually does when it comes to food exports. One of the most important parts of exporting food, and indeed importing food, is ensuring that those foodstuffs are of a sufficient quality. So irrespective of the market access that we secure in a trade deal, irrespective of the tariffs that we secure, nonetheless, every country needs to decide and to allocate a license to ensure that that food product class is sufficiently safe for their own consumers. And it's certainly the case that when people want to export food to the UK, DEFRA, through the Food Standards Agency, will license imports of sanitary and phytosanitary SPS product. So it's really important that when we're trying to export products to other countries, the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs work very hard with those licensing agencies in those other countries to ensure that the audit of our producers and the audit of our regulators is done in such a way to make sure that those licenses are expedited as fast as they possibly can. They can take 3 years to get done. We need to be doing this far, far quicker. And it's also the case that from time to time we get a problem whereby those licenses will be withdrawn. And we've seen this in the case of British beef over the years when we had the Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, mad cow disease. And it's only in the last few years that we've seen the French lift their ban on British beef, and we've seen the Americans lift their ban on British beef and lamb as a result of CJD. This is decades after this was a problem. And that is a second area where we need to see the DEFRA secretary doing absolutely everything they can in order to lift these bans and to make sure that we get proper market access into these areas. Furthermore, when we get to these countries, there are local laws which may create problems. And a good example of this is in Thailand, where they have perfectly acceptable religious views about alcohol. They require that alcohol is not promoted on the bottle. And yet, if you're trying to sell a bottle of 21-year-old malt whiskey, the laws could interpret that as being a promotion of a product rather than just a statement of fact that it is a very good whiskey. We've managed to resolve that problem through the DIT, as it turned out. But the important point is we need to make sure that at every level we are trying to break down those inadvertent barriers to entry. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, I do want to talk about New Clause 1, because I think New Clause 1, in the name of my colleague, the member for North Dorset, is incredibly well-intentioned. He absolutely stands up very, very enthusiastically for the interests of farmers. But I'm afraid that I feel it's rather misguided. Apart from anything else, I think it goes against the World Trade Organization laws. One of the problems with this new clause is that it seeks to ensure standards are maintained within the UK. But in doing so, it misses the point that standards are defined as outcomes, not as process. And it's the outcomes that we're particularly interested in. The process of ensuring that we have good animal welfare is very, very laudable and very, very important, and actually quite expensive for our own producers. But it's the outcomes of making sure that our consumers aren't poisoned by food that is a really important point. Now, I completely sympathise with the objectives of this new clause, because I think it does look to try to help our farmers. But if we were to pass News Clause 1, we would end up setting a barrier for ourselves, because we would introduce a process-based regulation rather than an outcomes-based regulation under WTO terms. So what we have to do is support our farmers in terms of promoting exports. We need the Secretary of State to report back on an annual basis, but we don't want to create other barriers, and New Clause 1 will introduce those barriers. Thank you.